I never thought I'd see my own murder caught on camera. But there it was, playing on my phone screen at 9:47 a.m. on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The email subject line read, "Federal Investigation Notice Vance Family Fraud Case," and attached was a video file I'd tried to forget for 3 years. My finger hovered over the play button. I knew what I'd see. Blood. My blood. Pooling on the kitchen floor, while my mother stood over me with a chair raised like a weapon, ready to bring it down again. My sister, Sophia's voice in the background, not screaming for help, but laughing, actually laughing, and recording every second for her social media followers. The email contained something else, too. A court document with my parents' names in bold letters, charged with federal fraud, embezzlement of government benefits, conspiracy, and 12 other counts I had to scroll to see. But it was the final paragraph that made my coffee mug slip from my hands and shatter on my apartment floor. Testimony from Eleanor Vance proved instrumental in securing this conviction. Defendants sentenced to 8 and 6 years respectively in federal prison. 8 years. 6 years. I'd spent 28 years as their prisoner. They'd get less than a third of that time for what they did to me. The video kept playing. I watched myself on that kitchen floor. Watched the moment I stopped fighting back. Stopped pleading. Stopped believing my family would ever love me. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I decided I'd rather die trying to escape than spend one more day as their ghost. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how the perfect daughter became the family's greatest enemy. Let me tell you about the $500,000 life insurance policy I never signed. Let me tell you about the day I discovered my parents had been stealing my identity for 6 years, collecting disability checks in my name, while I worked full-time and gave them rent money. Let me tell you about the night I ran for my life, at 1 a.m., with nothing but 2 duffel bags and evidence that would send my entire family to prison. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything. And I promise, this story has a resolution you won't want to miss. Drop a comment below about your own experiences with toxic family dynamics. Because trust me, you're not alone. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I need to start even earlier than I thought. Because the seeds of what happened were planted long before I was old enough to understand. My parents, Brenda and Robert Vance, met in college. They were both from working-class backgrounds, both hungry for the American dream of financial security and social status. My mother dropped out when she got pregnant with me, and I think she never quite forgave me for that. My father finished his degree and landed a job in logistics management, but it never paid as much as they'd hoped. They got married quickly, quietly, with resentment already brewing beneath the surface. I was born in late October, just as the Seattle rain started its relentless winter assault. My earliest memories are fragmented, impressionistic. My mother's tight smile when relatives commented on how plain I was. My father's distracted pats on the head when he came home from work. The feeling, even at 4 years old, that I was somehow a disappointment. Though I couldn't articulate why, I remember trying so hard to be good, to be quiet, to be perfect. I remember failing. Then came Sophia. I was 5 years old when my mother sat me down and told me I was going to be a big sister. I was excited, genuinely thrilled at the prospect of having a sibling to play with. I spent weeks helping my mother prepare the nursery, picking out stuffed animals, learning how to fold tiny clothes. I thought this baby would be my friend, my ally, someone who would make our small family feel more complete. Sophia arrived in May, during a rare stretch of sunshine. The moment my mother held her in the hospital, I saw something shift in her face. It was a look of pure, uncomplicated love. The kind I'd spent 5 years trying to earn and never quite achieving. Sophia had blonde curls, even as a newborn. She had my mother's delicate features and bright blue eyes. She was, as my grandmother kept saying, absolutely perfect. And standing there in my rumpled dress with my mousy brown hair and my father's unfortunate nose, I understood, in the way children understand things without words, that I would never be perfect enough. The change wasn't immediate. It was gradual, insidious, like water eroding stone. At first, my parents were just busy with a newborn. That was normal. But as months turned into years, The pattern became undeniable. Sophia's first word was celebrated with a party. Mine had been noted with a distracted nod. Sophia's first steps were recorded on video and shared with every relative. I didn't even know if my first steps had been noticed. When Sophia cried, the world stopped. When I cried, I was told to stop being dramatic. By the time I was 8 and Sophia was 3, my role in the family had crystallized. I was the helper, the responsible one, the one who didn't need attention because Sophia needed it more. I made my own breakfast, packed my own lunch, walked myself to school. I helped with Sophia's potty training, read her bedtime stories, entertained her when my mother needed a break. I didn't mind at first. I loved my little sister. Even when she got all the attention, I thought that if I was helpful enough, good enough, responsible enough, my parents would see my value too. I was wrong. The more I gave, the more they expected, and the less they appreciated. It became my job to keep Sophia happy, to prevent her tantrums, to manage her emotions because my parents couldn't be bothered. When Sophia broke my toys, I was told to share better. When she hit me, I was told I must have provoked her. When she got praise for every small accomplishment, I was reminded that I should be setting a better example. School became my refuge. I threw myself into academics with desperate intensity. If I couldn't be pretty like Sophia, maybe I could be smart. If I couldn't charm people the way she did, maybe I could achieve things that mattered. I joined every club that would have me, volunteered for every project, stayed late in the library, finishing homework to perfection. My teachers loved me. I was diligent, conscientious, eager to please. I got straight A's year after year. I won academic awards. I made honor roll every semester. My parents attended exactly one of my award ceremonies. And they brought Sophia, who was 6 at the time and complained loudly through the entire event about being bored. My mother spent most of the ceremony on her phone. My father checked his watch repeatedly. When I received my award for highest GPA in 8th grade, they clapped politely, minimally, like strangers obligated to show respect. On the drive home, Sophia cried about wanting ice cream, and we stopped to get her some. No one asked if I wanted to celebrate my achievement. The trophy went on a shelf in my room, where no one but me would ever see it. High school was when I really started to understand how deep the inequity ran. I was 14. Sophia was 9. And the contrast between our lives was stark. I had a flip phone, a hand-me-down from my father when he upgraded. Sophia had the latest iPhone, purchased specifically for her, even though she was in elementary school. I wore clothes from Target and thrift stores. Sophia wore name brands, her closet bursting with options. I saved birthday money for necessities. Sophia got an allowance of $50 a week for existing. The financial disparity was just the surface. What cut deeper was the emotional investment. My mother attended every single one of Sophia's dance recitals, soccer games, and school events, often bringing professionally decorated posters and coordinating with other parents for elaborate celebrations. When I had academic competitions or club presentations, I was told they conflicted with Sophia's schedule. My father never took a day off work for my events, but he'd used vacation days to chaperone Sophia's class trip to the science center. I tried to talk to them about it once. When I was 15, I chose my moment carefully, waiting until Sophia was at a sleepover and my parents were both home and relatively relaxed. I sat them down at the kitchen table and, with my voice shaking, told them that I felt overlooked. I didn't use the word unloved, though that's what I meant. I gave specific examples. I asked if they could try to attend just one of my events, to show they cared about my accomplishments too. My mother's face hardened immediately. She told me I was being selfish and jealous. She said that Sophia was younger and needed more attention, and that I should be mature enough to understand that. My father said that I was old enough to be independent, and that I should be grateful they'd raised me to be self-sufficient instead of needy like other kids my age. Then my mother added, with a tone of finality, that if I didn't like how things were, I was welcome to get a job and start contributing to the household instead of just taking. I was 15. I couldn't legally work full-time, but that didn't matter to them. The message was clear. My needs, my feelings, my desire for basic parental affection, These were burdens, inconveniences, evidence of character flaws. I left that conversation feeling smaller than I'd ever felt before, and I never brought it up again. Instead, I doubled down on achievement. If they wouldn't love me, maybe someday I'd be successful enough that they'd regret how they'd treated me. Maybe I'd be so accomplished that they'd have to acknowledge my worth. I worked harder in school. Got a part-time job at a local coffee shop, despite my mother's complaints that it was embarrassing to have a daughter who worked retail, and started saving every penny I earned. I had a vague plan that involved college, escape, and a life where I didn't feel like a ghost in my own home. Junior year, I applied to 7 universities. I spent weeks on my applications, crafting essays that laid bare my struggles and achievements. I asked my teachers for recommendations, and they wrote glowing letters about my character and potential. When the acceptance letters started arriving in spring, I felt a flutter of hope. 5 out of 7 schools accepted me. 3 offered partial scholarships. I'd done it. I'd created a path out. I showed the letters to my parents on a Saturday morning, arranging them on the kitchen table like treasures. My hands were shaking with excitement and nervousness. My mother glanced at them while sipping her coffee, barely reading the contents. "That's nice, honey," she said absently. "Did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning yesterday?" My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. "College is expensive. Ellie, we can't afford it." I'd anticipated this. I'd prepared. "I have partial scholarships," I said quickly, "and I've been saving from my job. I can take out student loans for the rest. I've researched it all. I just need you to sign the financial aid forms." "No." My father's voice was flat. Final. What I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "No. I mean, we're not signing anything," he said, finally looking at me. "Your mother and I have discussed this. Sophia is going to need support when she goes to college. She's got real potential. Dance. Maybe theater. Those programs are expensive. We need to save our money for her education. Not waste it on you." "Waste it?" My voice cracked. "I have a 0 gigapascals. I have scholarships. I'm not asking you to pay for everything, just to support me." My mother set down her coffee cup with an irritated sigh. "Ellie, be realistic. What are you even going to study? You're not particularly talented at anything. Sophia has gifts that need nurturing. You're just academic. You can get a job, work for a few years, and if you still want to go to college later, you can pay for it yourself." The room seemed to tilt. I looked at the acceptance letters, at the proof of my worth laid out in black and white, and realized that no amount of achievement would ever be enough. They didn't see me as someone with potential. They saw me as a resource to be used for Sophia's benefit. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, it meant nothing to them. I didn't go to college. My parents refused to sign the financial aid forms, which meant I couldn't get federal loans. The partial scholarships weren't enough to cover tuition, room, and board. I watched my classmates post excited announcements about their college acceptances on social media while I quietly withdrew my applications and tried not to think about the future I'd lost. Instead, I got a full-time job as a receptionist at a dental office. The pay was modest but steady. My mother immediately informed me that I'd need to contribute to the household now that I was working full-time. She calculated that my fair share of rent, utilities, and groceries came to $800 a month. I was 18. Making $200 a month before taxes, and she wanted more than a third of my income. When I tried to negotiate, she threatened to kick me out. I paid. What I didn't know then was that my parents owned the house outright. They'd inherited it from my father's parents and had no mortgage. The money I gave them wasn't going toward actual household expenses. It was going into Sophia's college fund and their personal spending, but I wouldn't discover that until years later. When I found the bank statements, life settled into a bleak routine. I worked 45 hours a week at the dental office. I came home to a list of chores that multiplied daily. I cooked dinner for the family. I cleaned the bathrooms, did the laundry, vacuumed the carpets, mowed the lawn. My mother had stopped doing housework almost entirely, deciding that since I lived there for free, her words, despite the $800 monthly payment I should earn my keep, "Sophia, meanwhile, was exempt from all chores. She was too busy with her activities. My mother said she needed to focus on her future. Sophia's future was unfolding beautifully, at least from my parents' perspective. She'd become a star in her high school theater program, landing lead roles in every production. She was popular, beautiful, charismatic. She had a boyfriend, a social life, thousands of followers on Instagram. My parents doted on her, attending every performance, throwing elaborate parties for her achievements, buying her anything she wanted. I was happy for her. Genuinely, she was my sister, and she'd never asked for the preferential treatment. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt to watch her get everything I'd been denied. What made it worse was that Sophia had started to treat me the way our parents did. She'd learned from them that I was less important, less worthy of respect. She borrowed my things without asking and returned them damaged or not at all. She ordered me around like a servant, asking me to fetch things, clean her room, drive her places. When I said no, she'd complain to our mother, who would then berate me for being uncooperative and selfish. It was easier to just comply. The emotional abuse was constant and casual. My mother's favorite insult was calling me a waste of space. My father preferred disappointed silence, looking through me like I was invisible. Sophia mocked my appearance, my job, my lack of a social life. "Don't you have any friends?" she'd ask, laughing. "Oh, right. You're too boring for friends." The cruelty was reflexive, automatic. They didn't even seem to realize they were being cruel. To them, this was just how you treated someone like me. I started having panic attacks when I was 23. The first one happened at work. In the middle of a busy afternoon, my chest constricted, my vision tunneled, and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was dying. My boss called an ambulance. The paramedics told me it was anxiety, that I needed to see a doctor and probably a therapist. I couldn't afford either, even with my dental insurance, so I learned to manage the attacks on my own, using breathing techniques I found on YouTube and hiding in the bathroom at home when the attacks hit so my family wouldn't mock me for being dramatic. The years blurred together. 23 became 24, became 25. I watched Sophia graduate high school with honors she hadn't particularly earned, my mother having called her teachers repeatedly to advocate for grade changes and extra credit opportunities I'd never been offered. I watched my parents throw her an elaborate graduation party that cost thousands of dollars in Valve. I watched them cry with pride as she opened her acceptance letter to a performing arts college in Los Angeles. I watched them write a check for her first year's tuition without hesitation. No one remembered that I'd also graduated high school with honors. No one remembered my acceptance letters. No one seemed to think there was anything wrong with this picture, and I'd been conditioned so thoroughly to accept my role that I didn't protest. I just kept working, kept paying rent, kept doing the housework, kept making myself smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared. But I hadn't completely given up on myself. In the quiet moments, late at night, when the rest of the house was asleep, I taught myself new skills. I took free online courses in data analysis, learning Python and R programming, studying statistics and database management. I worked through tutorials on data visualization and machine learning. I built projects in my spare time, creating a portfolio I kept hidden from my family because I knew they'd mock me for having ambitions above my station. By the time I was 26, I'd become genuinely skilled. I started applying for data analyst positions, hoping to leverage my self-taught expertise into a better career. I got rejection after rejection, usually because I lacked a formal degree. But I kept trying. It was the only thing keeping me sane. The belief that maybe, someday, I could build a life that was mine. Sophia moved to Los Angeles for college, and the house became quieter, but no less oppressive. My parents missed her desperately, calling her multiple times a day, visiting her every month. They started using me as an emotional dumping ground for their worry about her, complaining about how hard it was to have their baby so far away. They didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't notice that I was barely holding myself together. To them, I was just part of the furniture, useful, but unremarkable. When Sophia came home for breaks, it was like a whirlwind of chaos and entitlement. She'd bring friends home without warning, expecting me to cook for them and clean up after them. She'd monopolize the car, leaving me to take the bus to work. She'd blast music at all hours, keeping me awake. And when I asked her to turn it down, she'd laugh and turn it up louder. My parents thought her behavior was charming. Youthful exuberance. My exhaustion and frustration were signs of my inability to be fun. The breaking point started building in early February. When I was 28, I'd been working the same receptionist job for 10 years, watching younger, less qualified people get promoted past me because they had degrees and I didn't. I'd been living in my parents' house for 28 years, watching my bank account hover around $600 despite working full-time because every spare dollar went to rent, family emergencies that were really Sophia's impulsive expenses, and the steady erosion of my will to fight. I'd been invisible for so long that I'd started to believe I deserved it. Then I saw a job posting that changed everything. A tech company in San Francisco was hiring for a data analyst position, and the posting said, degree preferred but not required with equivalent experience. I had equivalent experience. I had a portfolio full of projects that demonstrated my skills. I had nothing to lose. I applied, not really believing anything would come of it. 2 weeks later, I got an email requesting an interview. My hands shook as I read it. This was it. This was my chance. The interview was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, which meant I'd have to take time off work. But I didn't care. I prepared obsessively, reviewing my projects, practicing my explanations, researching the company until I could recite their mission statement in my sleep. I didn't tell my family. I'd learned years ago not to share my hopes with them. They'd only find ways to diminish those hopes or sabotage them entirely. The morning of the interview, I woke up at 5 a.m. My stomach was a knot of nerves and excitement. I took a long shower, put on my one professional blazer over a nice blouse, and did my makeup carefully. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked professional, capable, like someone who deserved this opportunity. I told myself to believe it. I set up in the dining room because the lighting was better there than in my basement bedroom. I logged into the video call 5 minutes early, tested my camera and audio, and pulled up my portfolio on my laptop. At exactly 10 a.m., Ms. Albright appeared on screen. She was in her 50s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Good morning, Eleanor. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm excited to discuss the position. We fell into an easy rhythm. She asked about my background, and I explained my self-taught journey, emphasizing the projects I'd completed. She seemed impressed, nodding as I walked her through a complex data visualization I'd created. This shows real initiative and skill, she said. Tell me about your process for... The door slammed open. I jumped, my concentration shattering like glass. Sophia stood in the doorway, her hair a tangled mess, wearing pajama shorts and a coffee-stained tank top. She held her phone in one hand and an iced coffee in the other. Her eyes locked onto mine with an expression I knew too well. Irritation mixed with entitlement. Ellie, I need you to clean my bathroom right now. It's disgusting, and I have people coming over later. My face burned with humiliation. Ms. Albright's expression shifted from professional interest to confusion. I held up a hand in what I hoped was an apologetic gesture. I'm in the middle of something important, I said quietly, desperately. Can this please wait 30 minutes? Sophia's eyes narrowed. She hated being told no. It offended her on a fundamental level. Are you seriously ignoring me right now, God? Ellie, you're so self-centered. I'm asking you to do one simple thing. I'm in a job interview, I said, my voice tight with barely controlled panic. Please, just give me half an hour. Sophia looked at my laptop screen, at Ms. Albright watching this exchange with obvious discomfort, and something shifted in her expression. It was a look I'd seen before, usually right before she did something particularly cruel. She smiled, that sharp, mean smile that never reached her eyes. A job interview, she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Ellie, come on. Stop pretending to be something you're not. And then, before I could move, Before I could react, she picked up the glass of ice water I'd set on the table and dumped it directly over my head and laptop. The cold was shocking, stealing my breath. Water cascaded down my face, soaking through my blazer, running into my eyes. My laptop made a terrible crackling sound and went dark, the screen flickering once before dying completely. I sat there, frozen, water dripping from my hair, unable to process what had just happened. Through the water blurring my vision, I could see Miss Albright's shocked face on my phone screen, which had somehow survived. Sophia laughed, actually laughed, and held up her phone. She was recording this. She was recording my humiliation, my destroyed opportunity, my complete devastation, like it was entertainment. Don't pretend to be someone important, Sophia said, still laughing. You're a receptionist who watches YouTube videos. Stop embarrassing yourself with these delusions. Something inside me snapped. 28 years of suppressed rage, of swallowed hurt, of silent suffering. It all came roaring to the surface at once. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. Water was still running down my face, pooling on the floor. But I didn't care. Get out! My voice was a scream I didn't recognize, raw and primal. Get out right now. Sophia's smile faltered. Just for a second. She wasn't used to me fighting back. No one in this house was used to me fighting back. Don't you dare yell at me. You! I said get out. I was shaking with fury so intense it felt like electricity in my veins. You spoiled, entitled brat. Do you have any idea what you just did? Do you even care? Of course you don't care. You've never cared about anyone but yourself because Mommy and Daddy taught you that you're the only person in the world who matters. Mom Sophia's voice was shrill, performatively victimized. Mom! Ellie's being crazy, and right on cue, as if she'd been waiting in the wings for her entrance. My mother appeared. Brenda Vance took in the scene with a single sweeping glance. Me, soaking wet, trembling with rage. Sophia, phone out, playing the victim. The water all over the floor, the dead laptop, and she made her decision without a second of hesitation. What did you do to your sister? Her voice was cold. Dangerous. What did I couldn't even finish the sentence. She sabotaged my job interview. She destroyed my laptop. My mother's hand connected with my face before I saw it coming. The slap was hard enough to snap my head to the side, hard enough to make my ear ring. I staggered, my hand flying to my burning cheek. Don't you dare raise your voice in this house. My mother hissed. Apologize to Sophia right now. I stared at her, tasting blood where I'd bitten my tongue. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Apologize, are you insane? She just ruined. The second slap was harder. My vision sparked with white spots. Then my mother grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked, hard enough that I felt individual strands tear free. She pulled me downward, and I had no choice but to follow or have my hair ripped from my scalp. I crashed to my knees on the wet floor, pain exploding through my kneecaps. You are a worthless, ungrateful waste of space, my mother said, her voice shaking with genuine fury. This family has given you everything. And this is how you repay us, by being dramatic and abusive to your sister, by making scenes and causing problems. She shoved me, and I went sprawling, my hands sliding in the water. My phone skittered away, and I caught a glimpse of Ms. Keeple, Albright's horrified face before the screen went dark. The interview was over. My chance was gone. Everything was gone. My mother grabbed the chair I'd been sitting in. For one surreal moment, I thought she was going to put it back in place. Instead, she raised it above her head and brought it down. I barely rolled in time. The wooden edge caught me across the lower back instead of my spine. But the pain was still incredible, stealing my breath, making my vision go white. I heard myself make a sound, something between a gasp and a sob, and hated myself for it. Maybe pain will teach you what words haven't my mother said, standing over me with the chair still raised. Maybe this will help you remember your place in this family. You're not special. Ellie, you're not important. You're not going anywhere. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be. I lay on the floor, curled around the pain in my back, water and tears mixing on my face. Through the doorway, I saw my father appear. Robert Vance stood there in his work clothes, his briefcase in hand, and surveyed the scene with all the emotion of someone observing a mildly interesting accident on the highway. His daughter was on the floor, bleeding from her mouth, soaking wet, injured. His wife was standing over her with a chair. His youngest was filming the whole thing with a smile on her face. And he said, in a voice devoid of any feeling, "Pain is a good teacher. Ellie, this is your fault. Maybe you'll learn something from it." Then he turned and walked away. Just walked away. Like this was normal. Like this was acceptable. Like his daughter's pain meant absolutely nothing to him. I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. I heard my mother drop the chair and follow him. I heard Sophia's laughter, bright and cruel. As she reviewed the footage on her phone, "This is gold," Sophia said. "I'm definitely posting this. When your sister has a mental breakdown, it'll get so many views." Then she left too, and I was alone on the dining room floor in a puddle of water and my own blood, staring at nothing, feeling nothing. Because feeling would break me and I couldn't afford to break yet. I had to survive this. I had to survive. I don't know how long I lay there. Long enough for the water to grow lukewarm. Long enough for the pain in my back to settle from acute agony to a deep, throbbing ache. Long enough to hear the television turn on in the living room. Hear my family's laughter at some sitcom. I hear them discussing dinner plans like nothing had happened. Like I wasn't bleeding 20 feet away. Like this was just another Tuesday. When I finally dragged myself upright, every movement sent fresh waves of pain through my body. My back screamed in protest. My knees were bruised from hitting the floor. My face ached where I'd been slapped twice. My scalp burned where my hair had been pulled. I looked at my reflection in the glass door of the china cabinet and saw a stranger. A ghost. A broken thing. I made my way to my basement bedroom, moving slowly, carefully. Each step down the stairs was agony. My room was exactly as I'd left it that morning, when I'd been full of hope and nervous excitement. My professional outfit was laid out on the bed. My notes were organized on my desk. The world was full of possibility. That felt like a lifetime ago. I peeled off my wet clothes. Moving mechanically, I found my first aid kit in the bathroom and did my best to assess the damage. My lip was split and swollen. My cheek was already bruising, a dark purple spreading from my cheekbone to my jaw. I couldn't see my back, but I could feel it. The pain suggested deep bruising at minimum, possibly worse. I swallowed 3 ibuprofen with shaking hands and pressed a cold washcloth to my face. I sat on the edge of my bed, wrapped in my bathrobe, and stared at the wall. I should have been crying. I should have been screaming. I should have been feeling something. Instead, I felt hollow, scraped clean, like there was nothing left inside me. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe they'd finally succeeded in breaking me completely. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it. What was the point? But some stubborn part of me, some tiny flicker of something that wasn't quite dead yet, made me pick it up. It was an email. From Ms. Albright. My chest tightened. This was it. The rejection. The confirmation that I'd destroyed my one chance. I opened the email with trembling fingers. Dear Eleanor, I hope you're all right after what I witnessed this morning. That situation looked extremely concerning. And if you need resources or help, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm reaching out both personally and professionally to say that I'd like to offer you another interview. What I saw today was obviously not representative of your professional capabilities, and your portfolio speaks for itself. You have real talent and initiative. If you're still interested in the position, please let me know, and we can schedule another time to talk. Best regards, Patricia Albright. I read the email 3 times, hardly believing the words. She was giving me another chance. Despite everything, despite the disaster she'd witnessed, she was giving me another chance. Someone believed I was worth the trouble. Someone saw value in me. The tears came then, hot and sudden, and I couldn't stop them. I cried until my ribs ached and my throat was raw. I cried for the little girl who'd never been good enough. I cried for the woman I'd become, beaten down and invisible. I cried for all the years I'd lost believing I deserved this treatment. And then, slowly, Something else emerged from beneath the tears. Not kite hope. Not yet. But something close. Determination. Clarity. The cold, hard knowledge that I could not survive this house much longer. If I stayed, they would destroy me. If I stayed, I would become the worthless, broken thing they believed I was. I had to leave. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. As soon as possible. I wrote back to Ms. Albright, thanking her profusely, and accepting her offer for another interview. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called an old friend from high school, Liam Chen. We'd lost touch after graduation, drifting apart as I'd sunk deeper into the prison of my family's expectations and he'd gone off to college. But I still had his number, saved in my phone like a lifeline I'd been too afraid to use. He answered on the third ring. Ellie. He sounded surprised but pleased. Wow. This is a blast from the past. How are you? The question almost broke me again. How was I? I was sitting in a basement room with bruises darkening on my face and back, having just been assaulted by my mother, while my father watched and my sister filmed. I was 28 years old with $600 to my name and nowhere to go. I was barely holding myself together. I've been better, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Is this a bad time? No. Not at all. What's going on, you sound? Are you okay? And because I was too exhausted to lie, too broken to maintain the facade anymore, I told him. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. I told him about the job interview. I told him about Sophia sabotaging it. I told him, in vague terms, about my family's treatment. I didn't mention the violence. Too ashamed to admit that I'd let it get this bad. But I told him enough that he understood I needed help. Liam listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Ellie, you need to get out of there. Like, as soon as possible. This isn't healthy. This isn't normal. You deserve so much better than this. Hearing someone say it out loud. Someone who wasn't me. Someone whose opinion I trusted. It made it real. I know. I whispered. I'm trying. I have another interview next week. If I get this job, I can leave. But I need to be careful. If they know I'm planning to go, they'll find a way to stop me. I'm in Oakland now, Liam said. Bay Area, close to San Francisco. If you get this job, I can help you find a place. I can help you move. You don't have to do this alone. Okay. You're not alone. I closed my eyes, letting those words sink in. I'm not alone. For years, I'd felt completely isolated, like I was fighting an invisible battle that no one else could see. But Liam saw it. Liam believed me. That made all the difference. Thank you, I said, my voice cracking. Thank you so much. We talked for another hour, making plans, discussing logistics. Liam suggested I start documenting everything, gathering evidence in case I needed it later. He mentioned domestic violence resources, offered to help me find a lawyer if necessary. He treated the situation with the seriousness it deserved, not minimizing my experience or suggesting I was overreacting. By the time we hung up, I had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. That night, I ordered 2 small security cameras online, having them shipped to my work address. If I was going to document my family's behavior, I needed evidence that was undeniable. I also opened a new bank account at a different bank. One my parents had no access to. I'd been putting my paychecks into a shared account my mother had insisted I use, claiming it made managing household finances easier. I realize now that she'd probably been monitoring my savings, making sure I never accumulated enough to leave. This new account would be mine alone. Secret. Safe. The next few days were excruciating. Every movement hurt. The bruise on my back darkened to a deep purple and spread, covering an area the size of a dinner plate. I moved stiffly, carefully, hiding my pain from my family because showing weakness would only invite more abuse. They acted as if nothing had happened, which was somehow worse than if they'd acknowledged it. My mother gave me my usual chore list. Sophia asked me to drive her to the mall. My father ignored me. Business as usual in the Vance household. When the cameras arrived at my work, I brought them home hidden in my purse. I set them up when my family was out. One in the living room behind a decorative plant. One in the kitchen tucked between cookbooks on a shelf. The angles weren't perfect, but they captured enough. I tested them remotely from my phone, making sure the footage uploaded to the cloud automatically. If anything happened, I'd have proof. I also started taking photos of my bruises, documenting the damage. It felt strange, clinical, but necessary. I photographed my back, my face, my knees. I wrote down dates and descriptions of incidents. I created a detailed timeline of the worst moments, the patterns of abuse, the financial exploitation. I was building a case, though I didn't yet know what I'd do with it. My second interview with Ms. Albright was scheduled for the following Wednesday. This time, I took the entire morning off work and conducted the interview from my locked bedroom. I'd tested the door multiple times to make sure it would hold if someone tried to enter. I'd warned Liam to call me if I didn't text him by 1130 a.m. just in case. But this interview went smoothly. Ms. Albright and I picked up where we'd left off, discussing my projects and methodologies. She asked detailed technical questions, and I answered them confidently. She presented hypothetical scenarios, and I solved them. By the end of the hour, she was smiling. I'm impressed. Eleanor, your self-taught skills are equivalent to what we see from graduates with formal degrees. Your portfolio is strong. Your problem-solving approach is sound. I'd like to offer you the position. My heart stopped. Then it started again, beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Really, I managed to say. Really. The salary is $72,000 annually. With benefits including health insurance and a 401k match, we'd need you to start April 1st. So you'd have 2 weeks to relocate and get settled. Does that work for you? 70,000 Ling ling ling. That was more than triple what I was making as a receptionist. That was enough to live on, to save, to build a life. Yes, I said, trying not to cry with relief. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me. I think I might have some idea. Ms. Albright said gently, welcome to the team. Eleanor, I'll send over the offer letter today. If you need any assistance with the relocation, please let me know. We want to make this transition as smooth as possible for you. After the call ended, I sat in my locked bedroom and let myself feel it. Joy. Pure. Uncomplicated joy. For the first time in years, I had something to look forward to. A future that was mine. A way out of this nightmare, but I couldn't celebrate. Not yet. Not here. If my family found out, they'd sabotage it somehow. I was certain of that. So I kept it secret, hugging the knowledge to myself like a precious treasure no one could steal. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly, methodically prepared to disappear. I told my work I was leaving, giving proper notice, but asking them not to reveal my new location if anyone called. I coordinated with Liam, who found me a small studio apartment in a safe neighborhood of San Francisco and helped me secure it remotely. I redirected my paychecks to my new bank account. I slowly moved clothes and essential items to my car, hiding things in the trunk under a blanket. I researched restraining orders and protective orders, just in case. And I kept the cameras running. They captured so much more than I'd expected. Arguments where my mother called me degrading names. Sophia going through my room when I wasn't home. Taking things. Leaving messes. My parents discussing their finances, mentioning the $800 I paid monthly as income from Ellie, like I was a tenant generating profit rather than their daughter contributing to household expenses I believed were necessary. But the cameras captured something else too. Something that made my blood run cold. One evening, I was working late, and when I reviewed the footage later that night, I found my parents having a disturbing conversation in the living room. She's getting ideas, my mother said. I can tell. She's been acting different. Quieter. Secretive. So what do you want to do about it? My father asked. I think we need to be more careful. If she leaves, we lose her rent money, and we lose the benefits. My father was quiet for a moment. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we need to make it harder for her to leave. Take her car keys. Take her ID. Something. I watched this footage 3 times, my hands shaking harder each time. They were planning to trap me. They were planning to make me unable to leave. I'd thought I had 2 weeks, but now I wasn't sure I had that long. I needed to move up my timeline. I texted Liam, "Can you come this weekend? I need to leave sooner than planned." His response was immediate. "Of course. Saturday morning. I'll rent a truck." But even as I was planning my escape, another discovery was coming. One that would change everything. I'd been assigned to clean my father's office that week. A task I usually dreaded because it meant dealing with his piles of disorganized papers. But this time, I approached it differently. This time, I was looking for something, though I wasn't sure what. I found it in a locked file cabinet behind his desk. The lock was simple, and I'd learned how to pick basic locks from YouTube videos during the lonely nights of my 20s when I couldn't sleep. It took me 3 minutes to get it open. Inside were files, bank statements, tax documents, legal papers. I started photographing everything with my phone, planning to review it later. But then I opened a folder labeled E. Vance, insurance, and my hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. It was a life insurance policy, taken out 5 years ago, for $500. Ling, ling, ling. With me as the insured, and my parents as the beneficiaries. I'd never signed anything. I'd never been asked. The signature on the documents was mine, but I'd never written it. They'd forged my signature and taken out a massive policy on my life without my knowledge or consent. I kept digging, feeling sicker with each discovery. There were Social Security statements showing disability benefits being paid in my name, dating back 6 years. Statements totaling over $90. Ling, ling, ling. Benefits I'd never applied for, never received. They'd claimed I was mentally incapacitated, unable to work, severely disabled. They'd submitted forged medical documents, fake psychological evaluations, fabricated evidence of conditions I didn't have. And there were bank statements for an account I'd never seen, showing regular deposits from these benefits and then transfers out to other accounts. Some went to a savings account in Sophia's name. Some went to my parents' personal checking. Some went to credit card payments for charges I recognized. Sophia's car, her college tuition, my mother's shopping trips, my father's golf membership. All of it paid for with money stolen in my name from the government. I photographed everything, every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. My hands were steady now, even as my mind reeled. They'd been committing fraud for years. They'd been stealing from the government and from me. They'd been systematically exploiting me in every possible way. Financially, emotionally, and now I understood. Physically, the abuse wasn't just cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was control. It was about keeping me too broken, too scared, too beaten down to question what they were doing. But the life insurance policy was what terrified me most. $500,000. That was more than they'd make from the benefits over decades. That was an incentive, a motive. I thought about my mother's comment. If something happened to her, we'd finally be comfortable. I thought about how easily she'd hit me, how little my father had cared. I thought about how isolated I'd been, how no one outside this house really knew me, or would notice if I disappeared. I had to leave. Not in 2 weeks. Not this weekend. Now, tonight, before they realized I'd found these documents, before they decided I was more valuable dead than alive, I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, locked the cabinet, and went to my room. My hands were shaking again as I texted Liam, "Change of plans. Coming tonight. Is that okay?" His response came 30 seconds later. "Tonight, are you safe? Do I need to call someone? I found something bad. Really bad. I just need to go. Can you meet me? Tell me where and when. I'll be there." I packed the rest of my essentials in 2 duffel bags. I couldn't take much, but I didn't need much. Clothes, documents, my laptop, the camera footage saved to USB drives, photos of my bruises, evidence. I dressed in layers, wearing as much as I could, so I'd have to pack less. I waited until midnight. When I was sure everyone was asleep, but I couldn't leave without one more thing. I went back to my father's office, picking the lock again, and took photos of the key documents with my phone camera set to the highest resolution. The life insurance policy, the fake disability claims, the bank statements, everything. I made copies using the printer he kept in the corner, wincing at each mechanical sound. I took the originals of the most damaging documents and left the rest. They'd notice eventually, but by then I'd be gone. I left the house at 1 a.m. I crept out to my car, loaded my bags in the trunk, and drove away from that house for what I hoped was the last time. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just disappeared into the night like the ghost they'd always treated me as. Liam met me at a 24-hour diner in Oakland at 3 a.m. I must have looked terrible, because the first thing he did when he saw me was pull me into a hug. I stood there stiffly, not used to being touched with kindness. And then I broke down sobbing against his shoulder. He didn't ask questions. He just held me and said, "You're safe now. You're out. You're safe." We drove to my new apartment as the sun came up. It was tiny. Just a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom. But it was mine. No one could take it from me. No one could hurt me here. Liam helped me unload my things, and then went to get us breakfast while I collapsed on the inflatable mattress he'd bought for me. I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, it was late afternoon. Liam had left food in my mini fridge and a note saying to call when I was awake. I looked at my phone and saw 17 missed calls from my parents and 32 texts from Sophia. I didn't read them. I blocked all their numbers. Then I called Liam. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "But free? Is that weird?" "Not even a little bit." "Ellie, I've been doing research. What you described. What they did. That's serious criminal fraud. You need to report this." "I know. I'm going to. I just needed to be safe first." "You're safe now. Let's figure out the next steps." Over the next few days, Liam helped me get settled. We bought basic furniture and kitchen supplies from thrift stores. He helped me set up utilities and internet. He took me to get a new phone with a new number. And then, when I was ready, he went with me to the Social Security Administration office to report the fraud. The investigator, Mr. Henderson, was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened to my story, looked at my evidence, and his expression grew graver with each passing minute. "This is one of the most comprehensive cases of benefits fraud I've seen in my career," he said finally. "And the life insurance policy, that's extremely concerning. Do you feel you're in danger?" "I did," I said honestly. "That's why I left so suddenly. I don't think they know where I am now. Though, we'll need to investigate this thoroughly. It'll take time, and we'll need your cooperation. Are you willing to testify if this goes to court?" "Yes. Absolutely." "Good. I'm also going to refer this case to the IRS and local law enforcement. What you're describing is federal fraud, tax evasion, forgery, and possibly conspiracy. This is serious. It took months. Months of interviews, of providing evidence, of waiting anxiously for updates. I started my job at the tech company and threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. My coworkers were friendly and professional. Ms. Albright became a mentor, someone who saw my potential and helped me develop it. I got my first raise 6 months in. I was good at this. I'd always been capable. I just needed someone to give me a chance. My parents didn't know where I lived or where I worked. They couldn't find me, but I heard through Mr. Wise, Henderson, that they were being investigated, that agents had shown up with warrants, that they were frantic. They tried to report me as a missing person, but I'd already told the police I'd left voluntarily and was fine. They had no power over me anymore. The charges came down in December. Federal fraud, forgery, identity theft, tax evasion. My parents were arrested at their home. Sophia was charged as an accessory after investigators proved she'd known the money she was receiving came from fraudulent sources. I heard about it through Mr. Teller Henderson, who called to let me know. We've also flagged the life insurance policy. The company is investigating whether the application itself was fraudulent. If they can prove your signature was forged, They'll void the policy. What happens now? I asked. Now there's a trial. And Ms. Vance, you'll be called to testify. The trial was set for April, exactly 1 year after I'd started my new job. When the subpoena came, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I'd survived their abuse for 28 years. I could survive a few hours in a courtroom telling the truth. I walked into that courtroom wearing a suit I'd bought with my own money. My head held high. I saw my parents at the defense table. My mother looked smaller, older, her hair graying at the roots. My father looked defeated. His shoulders slumped. Sophia sat behind them, looking furious and scared in equal measure. All three of them stared at me as I walked past. I didn't look away. I wasn't their victim anymore. The prosecution asked me to tell my story. I did, clearly and calmly. I described growing up as the overlooked daughter. I described the escalating abuse. I described the day of the interview, when my mother had hit me with a chair. I showed the jury photos of my bruises. I showed them the video footage from my cameras. The courtroom was silent except for my voice and the occasional gasp or murmur from the jury when they played the footage of my assault. Several jurors looked away. One was crying. My mother had gone pale. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Sophia was staring at the table. Then I described finding the documents. I walked the jury through the fake disability claims, the forged signatures, the stolen benefits. I showed them the bank statements, proving where the money had gone. I explained the life insurance policy and what it had meant to discover it. The defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter, someone who'd fabricated evidence out of spite. But the documents were authenticated by experts. The videos were verified as genuine. The bank records were irrefutable. There was no room for reasonable doubt. It took the jury 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. My mother collapsed in her chair, sobbing. My father just sat there, stunned. Sophia screamed at me across the courtroom. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I was simply done. This chapter of my life was over. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. My father got 8 years in federal prison. My mother got 6. Sophia got 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service. Plus she had to repay $45. Ling Ling. Her share of the fraudulent benefits? They were also ordered to pay restitution of over $90. 000 to the government, plus damages to me, though I knew I'd likely never see that money. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse into the bright April sunshine. Liam was waiting for me. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. Free. I said. I feel free. And I was. Over the following months, I continued to build my new life. I got promoted at work. I moved to a bigger apartment with a view of the bay. I started therapy to work through the trauma. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I started dating, learning what healthy relationships looked like. Liam and I grew closer, our friendship evolving into something deeper, though we took it slow. He'd seen me at my worst and stayed. That meant everything. I also started speaking publicly about my experience. I gave talks at domestic violence support groups, at fraud prevention seminars, at conferences about family abuse. I wanted other people trapped in similar situations to know that escape was possible, that they deserved better, that they were worth saving. I wanted them to know they weren't alone. Sometimes I think about that little girl in the pink dress, smiling on her 5th birthday. She deserved so much better than what she got. But she survived. She became strong. She became me. And I'm proud of her. I'm proud of me. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters. And you're not alone. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience and survival. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to walk away from toxicity, even when it's family. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are enough. Exactly as you are. Your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it.